All right. So today we are here with my good friend and mentor, Jeff Ginsbarg. And I think it'd be good for the audience to hear how we first met. So back in August of 2005, I got the courage to join Toastmasters, and I really had needed the courage because I had really severe social anxiety. It took me 2 months to get the courage to show up to a meeting, and then another 2 months after I showed up to get the courage to join. But Jeff was one of the most friendly people there, and I think he volunteered to be my mentor. I wasn't sure if you were assigned, but for by some cosmic reason, we got paired up in life and also in Toastmasters. And you were very helpful to me in learning to express myself better, which is really cool that we're doing this now. And I saw that you had such a personal growth mindset, so we resonated in that way. And part of that was also the mindset of how do you self empower yourself to take care of yourself financially. And we started talking about things like real estate, even though I wasn't into it at the time. And early on in our Toastmasters journey, we actually went to an event called the Millionaire Mind Intensive together by T. Harv Eker. And that was in mid October of that year. So just a couple months after we met. So Jeff, what would you like to say? How did you get involved in Toastmasters first before we dive into real estate?
Oh, well, good morning, Sonny, and thank you. Well, how did I get involved in Toastmasters? Well, in 1983, I went through a separation and I was totally depressed. And so I went to therapy, and the therapist realized that I wasn't going to be doing, I didn't want to do any of the drug therapies or anything like that. So she suggested a personal growth uh, uh, program and start reading books. And she said, Jeff, I suggest Toastmasters guy because you got to do something to get get you out of the doldrums. And it, what it did is it put me in line with professional people. I was working, driving a truck, running a warehouse. I didn't have any other marketable skills other than that. I was working with my father's business, and I was totally depressed because my wife had moved out, and so I joined Toastmasters, and they, like you were talking about, they were welcoming. I made friends. Some of my friends I still have 40 years later, and I got on a personal development. Toastmaster magazine actually had ads for Nightingale Conant programs, and I found out the library had them, so I didn't have to buy them. So I could go to the library and listen to them. And I learned a lot on my mobile uh, university called the car or the company truck. Just I carried around my little boom box, and I listened to cassette tapes of personal development, sales, running a business, real estate, and
That's
then it
awesome.
took off from there. Thank you.
Yeah, I used to do that too on my way to work, both going up the 405 freeway and coming back down, which takes quite a
Mm-hmm.
while here in Southern California. Plenty of opportunity to listen to empowering things. And so, with that in mind, how did you first get into or get interested in real estate investing?
Well, back in the probably 80s, early 90s, late 90s, there were a lot of infomercials by guys like Carlton Sheets, uh, Robert Allen, Dave Delgado. There were a number of them say, "Oh, get rich in real estate." So I started reading the books. Read Robert Allen's "No Money Down," a couple other books. I actually here's one course. I got into the Rich Dad Poor Dad thing in the late '90s, early 2000s. I got his Successful Real Estate Investor course, and I did a lot of that. And when I never was a high earning person, but I was doing okay in the late 90s, early 2000s. I had moved in with a woman, and we were living together with our two incomes together. We were able to do fairly well. And then, well, can I tell the story? Let me go ahead and tell the story.
Sure.
How I kicked out of Long Beach, so I bought a dog and got a house. So uh,
You
in
got kicked out
two,
of Long Beach?
I got yeah. We were renting a house in Long Beach, and in 2000, the landlord said, "Look, I sold my condo. I'm moving in. You got to move out." And we were like desperate. There wasn't a lot of inventory in the Long Beach area. and we didn't know where to go. We couldn't find rentals or anything. And so I said, well, let's call Gary and Bertie Cardova, the Cardova Realty, because they're friends of ours. And we looked at three houses and we saw one house in Lakewood, California. And I looked at Georgiana and she looked at me and I said, let's put an offer on it. Let's take it off the market. Let's cancel the cancel the open house for Saturday. I was desperate, and um, and as we were negotiating, the owner of the house could not take his little dog with him. He had a Shetland collie, and I said, "Well, I'll tell you what, we'll take the dog." So we paid $223,000 for the house, for the dog, and we got the house with it.
You paid for a dog and got the house. Is that a joke or a real deal?
Well, the dog came with the house. That helped sweeten the deal that we could get it because we were on a time frame to have to move out of the rental, and so we moved in and moved into the house, and we were in court for a eviction because we didn't. He wanted us out of the house because he needed to move in. So we bought the house, moved in, and the next day we're in court. Literally, that's how it went. And but I like to tell the story how I bought the dog and got the house. To me, it's funny.
It is funny. And
And that was my first house. I was 47 years old.
okay. That's good reference. And some people get in younger, some people get in older.
Right.
And that's just life. Everyone has their own path. Um, how did that spark, or did that spark an interest in investing more in real estate?
Well, I have been reading the personal development books and listening to the tapes. And I decided, well, I started reading about real estate. And like you were talking about, getting that nerve to go out and actually do it. But I did come into some money in 1998. So I had some money. That's how we were able to buy the house in 2000. I had the cash to do it. And Joe, my partner was working. I was working. We were making a decent income. And reading all the books. Then I saw an ad for Marshall Reddick Real Estate. It was a $70 for a day long real estate seminar, and we went to the seminar, and there was a tour of local houses in the Orange County, Long Beach area, and lo and behold, the local real estate reps for Marshall Reddick were actually our friends and our real estate agents, the Cordovas. So okay, so I see. Okay, let's go and look at this. I bought some of Marshall Reddick's courses. I kept going. I think did you actually go with me to one of his meetings
I
when he's
did,
going?
yeah. That was in the
Okay,
late 2000s at some point.
right. So I started going and into these seminars, uh, and what Marshall Reddick was saying is he was into buying new builds. There was a lot of building going on in the early 2000s. And we were traveling to Arizona periodically because Georgiana's uh, youngest daughter lived there with her family. So we went on a couple of real estate tours. And I saw one. I was looking on my own at first. So we saw one in Glendale. I almost pulled the trigger on that, but for some reason I didn't. But we kept going to these seminars and tours of properties, and I found one in Gilbert, Arizona. And Robert Allen says one of his recommendations is buy the worst house in the best neighborhood. So in this tract of homes that they were building, there were some 2-bedroom, 3-bedroom, and they were building 2-story, 4 bedrooms. These weren't the largest houses, but it was like the first track in this part of Gilbert, Arizona. So one thing I had learned from Robert Allen, you probably want to stay with a 3-bedroom, 2-bath house, about 1,200 square feet. That's a good starting point. So I put a deposit down, and I to build to build and buy this house in Gilbert, Arizona. So I had a chance of, over the 9 months that it took to build the house to visit and see it different stages of development. And I saw it when the structure was up, but they were still working on the insides and everything. So I got to do that. And then when it closed, it was ready to be ready to close. I took my tour to inspect it. I only went inside that house fully built once, and I bought the house, and I contacted Marcia Redditt's property manager for that area, and they got it rented out. And I had an interest-free first loan and a interest loan on the second. That's how I qualified. I put 10% down, and so I had positive cash flow. While as it was rented, I had positive cash flow, and so it was like $600 a month for a mortgage. It was a house was around $143,000 or something. So it worked out very well for a while, and then a couple years later, we were looking and we were looking to buy a house together. The first one in Gilbert, I bought on my own. I saved my commissions for the down payment, and they helped me get the loans on it. Then we were looking and got a second one. And here's where we made our first mistake. We bought the best house in the worst neighborhood.
Oh
So we
gosh, how
bought
did
the
that happen?
4 bedroom, the 4 bedroom, 2 bath house in a poorer part of South Phoenix. And the son-in-law said, don't recommend it. It's not the best neighborhood. But we did it anyway. We pulled the trigger. It was so easy in those days to buy a house. You had ninja loans, no interest, no income, no job, no assets. That was easy to get a loan back in. So I think it was 2005. We purchased that home, went with the same mortgage, the same property manager. It was with the Marcia Reddick network. And here's where I made another big mistake. Marcia Reddick at the time was saying, just buy the house. Even if you have $100 a month negative cash flow, you're going to get that back in the taxes and depreciation and appreciation. And that's where I learned the first mistake. Don't do that. So if anybody's looking at buying a place and it has negative cash flow, I suggest you rethink it.
Let's back up a bit. When you were considering the first rental property to buy that, what made you decide that it was time in your life to do that?
It was a real challenge. It was stepping up because I have not always been the most courageous person. So I did this. I did it on my own, so to speak, with the team around me, but I did it on my own. I proved to myself I could do it.
That's amazing. So many of us have limiting beliefs about that.
You're right. And trust me, those limiting beliefs were there, still are in some respects, but this looked like a good deal. The worst house in the best neighborhood. If you look at the neighborhood now, they built, there are other developments surrounding it, all these 4 or 5 bedroom homes, 2-story. And here's this little subdivision of the smaller homes. So the worst house in the best neighborhood. It was working out. And during the boom years, great appreciation, and I was at cash flow. So if a toilet needed to be fixed, I had the money to fix it. And then I learned another lesson. And there's the 4 T's of real estate. Are you familiar with them?
Tenants, toilets, trash, and what's
Termites.
termites? Okay, yeah.
Yes. Well, 3 of the 4 apply because there was a new house, so I didn't have the termite problem. Tenants, toilets, and trash. And what happened was I had some good tenants, and then the final tenants we had were just awful. They were young kids partying. Homeowners Association was constantly sending me letters about these people, and then they stopped paying the rent. I had to put $3,000 into a new air conditioner. You have to have air conditioning in the summer in Phoenix, Arizona. So what happened was that these kids totally trashed the house. And I got photos of it. Uh, they punched holes in the wall, tore the doors off the cabinets. Um, they
Wow.
had at least 100 empty wine and booze bottles strewn throughout the house. They left their stuff. We had a victim, and this is at a time where I was going through a real struggle in life financially, and it was a $10,000 to fix the house, and I just didn't have it. So I had to let it go. I didn't know what else to do.
How did you decide at first? And again, I'm rewinding here, but you mentioned you only walked the house once before deciding to buy it, and you mentioned it's the worst house in the best neighborhood. How did you know that it's the best neighborhood or one of the better neighborhoods?
Gilbert, Arizona was an up and coming neighborhood that they were putting the infrastructure, the shopping centers, the schools, and the roads and everything. It was up and coming. It was mostly flat land in 2003 when I purchased it, and the other developments came after this particular one.
So in some way, you engaged the economic development there and knew that
Yes,
you were coming in early enough where you were probably going to do well.
right. And I know interest only loan was a risk, and I but I took that risk, feeling that we're going to get appreciation and I'll be able to refinance it we'll get one loan and maybe have enough equity where I get rid of the PMI. I think that's why we had the second loan, to get rid of the PMI, private mortgage insurance. And I had positive cash flow because it was a $600 a month mortgage. Paid 10%. We rented it out for $1,000. Paid 10% to the property management company. I think it was maybe even less the first year, and I kept that money for maintenance. I didn't live off that extra $200 a month of income. I left it there for the business aspect of it.
Nice. And what do you think could have been done better in picking tenants to avoid that disastrous situation?
I think one of them was I was so desperate to just have anybody in there. We took the first people to apply. And if I remember right, I think it's going back a number of years. I think the property manager was a little concerned, but we decided to go with it anyway.
Did
And they
you work
paid the
with the
rent.
property manager to find that tenant, or did the property manager find the tenant?
Yeah, that's what the property manager does. You have to pay for an advertising fee, and there might have been a fee when they come in, and then they got a certain percentage of the rent as their property management fee. And they started off really great, but what happened was they got so big. Marshall Reddick was bringing people in, and they were selling 30 or more houses a month. So after a few years, they now had thousands of houses to manage, and I don't think they had the staff to do it. There was after a while a lot of complaints about the property management company.
So the property management company found the tenant, but they recommended you didn't go with the tenant and you chose
I
to,
think there
or
was a little. I think they were a little hesitant. We're going back a number of years, but I think they were a little hesitant. But they said, they looked like they might be okay, so we went ahead because I didn't want the house to be vacant.
yeah, so the house is vacant, you're paying that mortgage on your own at
Right.
holding costs, basically.
There you go. Exactly. Because I didn't expect to get rich on one home. I expected, I wanted positive cash flow. The idea was get some equity, maybe borrow against it, buy others. What my significant other and I did, we bought one house together in South Phoenix. That was the best house in the worst neighborhood. And that is another thing. It's probably not the wisest thing to do. Buying with a partner that you're not married to.
Can be, I mean, that can get sticky, right?
Yes, exactly.
Depending on the relationship, you have to gauge that for yourself to see how strong is that relationship, right?
Mm-hmm.
And on top of that, how did you decide to buy in that neighborhood when previously you had bought in a, like a really good neighborhood and a house that wasn't as good?
That one was available. The one in the worst neighborhood was available right away. And I may not have gotten that point of buy the worst house in the best neighborhood in my head yet at that particular time. I said, well, this is the best house in this neighborhood, so let's buy it. And we actually thought about moving into it at one time. But the son-in-law said, if you move in, I'm not visiting you. I'm not bringing my kids to visit you there. I should have gotten the
Was that tough of a neighborhood?
I to me it didn't look. But I think the surrounding area was not good. That part of South Phoenix wasn't good. But this was a new development. You would figure people are buying homes that they're going to be a little bit maybe more upscale. But I bought the homes not to live in, but to rent them out.
Right, that makes sense. Um, did you have any particular criteria when you were looking at houses? The first one and the second one that it had to match?
I think it was the fact that I didn't want a fixer upper. I wanted new build. I wanted that home warranty. I am not a carpenter. I I do not uh, do well with home improvement projects. We in our house, our residence in Lakewood, we had a number of those, and I did not actually uh, appreciate it or love doing that type of thing.
Yeah,
Calling on contractors, getting the roofer, getting that wasn't my idea of fun. A lot of people love that. I know people who've made millions of dollars flipping houses and repairing them.
know thyself. That's always what they say, and but it's a journey to know yourself. A lot of times you have to experience something you don't like to come to realize that, hey, I actually this just isn't the right thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, so many great lessons. What other lessons do you think would be great for people to hear about?
Well, there's a number. One is one that I learned the hard way. Don't use your personal residence as an ATM machine.
Okay, say more about that.
Okay, well, and before the housing meltdown, what 2006, 2007, we walked into the bank and said, "Hey, we got all this equity. We want to borrow $100,000." The guy said, "Okay." 30 minutes later, we had $100,000, and we used it to pay off credit cards, to do this, do that, and then that's how we got the down payment to buy one of the rental homes in the second rental home in Arizona. We took the equity out of the house in Lakewood, and then we said, okay, well, we got all this. We need more money, so we went back to the bank, and 30 minutes later, we had another $100,000 because equity in homes had gone up. Well, guess what happened right after we did that?
Oh, was that
How,
the 2008 crisis?
yes, sir. The Now we have a $400,000 we owed $400,000 on the house, and the house is now worth less than $400,000. We're now underwater, and that happened in Arizona all at the same time. And then we decided we were going to move to Arizona. So I said, well, my rental home will be available. We could live in that. My little, we downsized some. We have a $600 a month mortgage. No, no, no. I got to have a fancy house. So we went out and borrowed money on our house to buy a huge house in Arizona to move into,
A third
and
house in Arizona.
a third house in Arizona. This was going to be our residence. It was 2,600 square feet, on a third of an acre, corner house in a cul-de-sac. That's not what we needed. And as soon as we bought that house, because we thought it was a deal, it went down in half. So now we've got four houses. We had at one time $1 million worth of real estate, and then all of a sudden we got about $600,000 in real estate, and we owe $600,000. So I went from a $500,000 net worth, literally within maybe a year, to $500,000, $600,000 in debt.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. Did you know that story? Did I ever tell you
I
that?
I knew the sort of the edges of the story and some of the details, but not. I think you did a great job just now, really sharing the details and the journey of how that all happened with enough depth that I got it at a deeper level of how hard that situation was and how fast it turned.
How fast it turned, how easy it was to get. We got into these houses because of the ninja loans. We got into 4 houses. We have 4 houses, and we didn't have the income to pay for one. Yeah, because we had tenants, toilets, and trash in both rental homes,
So what
and they
happened
both went to
after
foreclosure.
the foreclosure?
Yeah, they both went. I stopped making the payments. I couldn't make the payments. I couldn't make the payment on my home in California, so I lived in the home for a year and a half rent free because the mortgage meltdown. It was called short sale, and it took a year and a half to sell the home.
You did a short sale in the Lakewood home.
Yes, sir.
I'm for the audience not familiar, Lakewood is here in Southern California near Long Beach. Um, did you have an opportunity to do a short sale in Arizona on any of the rentals?
No, because you can't short sell a house that you don't live in.
Oh, really? Okay. I didn't know that. That's good
To
to know.
my understanding, yeah. So I just stopped making the payments, and they both went to foreclosure. So the one in South Phoenix, we had a second on it, and I had to make a deal to pay off that second. And I was broke. I was pretty much broke. I went from a $500,000 net worth to $5,000, $6,000 underwater. So by going to foreclosure, I got those paid off. I had to pay off, made a deal to pay off the second, and I was very lucky on the first house. When it sold at foreclosure, it sold at basically what I paid for it. So I had money coming back to me as far as the down payment, and paid a lawyer to get that money. I almost lost that money because I didn't know what to do. So I hired a lawyer, and they took a portion of it, and I got that money. And that was money I lived on for quite a while.
Wow.
Because
Given
yeah,
given everything you've been through, what would you do differently?
uh, number of things I would do differently. Number one, I mentioned earlier, don't use your personal residence as an ATM machine. But if you're going to go into the business of real estate investing, and and you study the systems and everything, and you want to borrow on, let's say, a rental home to buy another rental home, that that can make sense. But do not, my opinion, do not use your home as an ATM machine. We paid off credit cards, went on a cruise, and the next thing I know, you know, she moved to Arizona and told me not to come, and now I'm stuck with 4 mortgages and not enough income.
That is definitely a very rough and tough life lesson. Um, eh,
Yes, and the other thing is, I bought the home. We bought the home. We didn't do any LLCs or anything. I just bought the house in my name, and I think if I did it differently, each home would, if I would do it as a separate business. Make it a business. It's a business when you rent out a home, and
that's a good
do an
point.
LLC for protection.
Yeah, excellent point. Anything else? Any other lessons you'd suggest people take away from this, or things that they should consider if they're considering buying rental homes, doing any kind of real estate investing?
Look at homes. Look at areas you want to go. Make uh, um, have a good team behind you. This is one thing I learned in a real estate seminar. Got to have a team behind you. Real estate agents, real estate attorneys, accountants, insurance agents, property management companies. Have a team around you. And with the property management company, they had a team of handyman and stuff like that that they could call on. They would get group rates for that because they were at one time had 1,000 homes that they were managing. That's one thing I would do. Look at a number of properties. Robert Allen's Buy the Worst House in the Best Neighborhood. Um, yeah, yeah, those are some things. Yeah,
That's good advice. Some people even say that some of that is cliche, but there's always a reason that cliches exist because they tend to be timeless truths. By the worst house in the best neighborhood. Now, of course, you need to actually make that tangible and understand the actual economic factors that make a given area worth investing in. And that's why it's considered a best neighborhood. And what is the worst house? I mean, that's a little bit easier because you can kind of see maybe it's rougher, it's a fixer upper, or in your case, it was actually a new build, but it was maybe not as big, maybe not as
it was a
fancy.
smaller.
It was a
Yes,
smaller house. So usually when I think about worst house, I think about something that's almost falling apart. You see the grass growing really crazy and everything. In your case, it was not the case that that it was falling apart. It was just a smaller house and not as fancy, right?
right. Yeah, exactly. And what I liked about new builds was the warranty. Yeah, I did the basic things in the backyard because in Arizona you do desert landscaping, so you don't have to put a yard in there. It was a small backyard. It was a good starter home for a family, or like my first tenants, they only lived there for 6 months because they were building a home, so they just needed a place to live while their new home was being built.
All right. Anything else you want to share about your cautionary tale or lessons you think people should know?
Well, study and learn. There's a million ways to make $1 million in this world, and study, find something that works for you. Some people with the the handyman mentality might like fixer uppers, and that's great. There are a lot of people who can make money buying, uh, reconstructing, and flipping homes. I think it depends on area too right now because, and we both live in California. The the worst house in the best neighborhood is $1 million house where we are, and how much do you have to charge for rent to if you buy $1 million house? And how many people can spend $5,000 a month, maybe, or more? How much money do you need to put down? How to do that? So look at that. Make sure you got the infrastructure, the jobs, the schools, uh, the shopping centers. All make sure all that internet, water. Make sure all that is in place. And there are people, Sonny, who they buy they'll buy the $20 million house because they're going to put $1 million into it and flip it for 50 million. There are people who do that and make money at it. That was out of my realm at this. At my stage was keep it simple for success. The
That's a
KISS
good
method.
point because those the margins can be that much better when you get into the luxury realm. That said, it's also a much riskier business because you have to really know what you're doing. You have to really know what a high-end buyer looks for, the types of what do you call it, fits and finishes
Mm-hmm.
that they look for. Um, and you're gonna need a much higher budget to purchase that property. You're gonna need a much higher budget to fix that property and get it up to the standard where a luxury buyer comes in and says, "Wow, this is great." I've watched a
Mm-hmm.
number, and I'm not an expert in that stuff, but I've watched a number of real estate shows like on Netflix and HGTV, etc., where they do focus on higher end properties. And one of the risks that they constantly point out with these higher end properties is that the property ends up being so specific to a particular style or taste that they say we're going to actually have a hard time selling this property for what you want to get for it because this taste is now out of style or it doesn't suit. There's only a certain kind of buyer that this is going to suit. This time,
Mm-hmm.
this kind of kitchen, this kind of fancy garage or whatever it is, this kind of backyard. A lot of people are actually not going to want this.
Right.
Um, there's a famous example, Michael Jordan. He's been trying to sell his mansion in I don't know if it's Highland Park or somewhere near there, outskirts of Chicago. It's an amazing, beautiful place, and the entire thing is customized for Michael Jordan, including the front gate when you drive up has the number 23 on it, and he's got like his trophy room. He's got so much that's customized for him. And I would,
Basketball court. Yeah.
yeah, basket. I think you've actually probably seen this house on TV or something, and it's an amazing house. He tried to sell it for something like 25 million plus, and that
Hmm.
was 10 years ago. And then it's been on the market for the last 10 years, and he's dropped the price down to like, I don't know if I'm getting this right, but he dropped the price by like $10 million, and it's still on the market. I don't really
Hmm.
understand that because I would think that someone who's a Michael Jordan fan would love to just grab that house and have it, you know.
But you and I might be Michael Jordan fans, but I offered him 8.5 million and he rejected it.
I would
How
think
many
like
people have that kind of money to buy a house like
with a house like that, maybe you could turn it into a tourist place or something. I don't know, but I mean,
that?
that's just kind of an
I
example
get it.
of what we're talking about. Of you've got to start where you are. You've got to not overextend yourself financially. You need to start from step one and learn if you're going to do fix and flips.
Right.
Ideally, partner with someone who knows how to do that, and you come in and you just learn and you learn and learn step by step. So you shared some amazing examples today of what can go wrong when you overextend yourself, and it can happen very easily. In an up market, you get excited, you purchase more properties, and the market suddenly turns
Right.
down on you. That's what
Hmm.
happened with you. If the market hadn't turned down, you might have done very well. You might have even more properties now. And so now I know like you have not been active in real estate for a while, and you're enjoying retired life. That said, what kind of deals would you be on the lookout for in the current economy?
And I appreciate you bringing it up. I'm going to go back 3 years. In 2020, you and I listened to JT Fox, a branding seminar. And so I started following JT Fox, and I actually spent money to be to be mentored by one of his coaches, and his one of his real estate partners is named Polly, and Polly and I had a couple of coaching calls, and they were buying and flipping houses. They were making a lot of money. This is during the beginning of COVID, and I was working at the time, and I was I had a second source of income, so I was getting really confident until I in June of 2020 I got a call saying your service is no longer needed. So now that that stopped me. I was like, I don't have the income to live on. I didn't want to take that risk of buying real estate. I don't want to be a flipper. I wanted to invest and wanted somebody else to do the work. And when I said, well, I got $50,000 I could invest with you, they, they looked at me and said, well, that's the bare minimum that we would need on a property. So I kind of was at that time not in the market. So I lost my confidence. But there are other ways to get into the real estate market. One is syndication. One could be uh, um, uh, what do they call it? A REIT, real estate investment trust. Uh, Investing with a company like Fundrise. I have considered doing that. Just you can invest small amounts of money and you're involved in real estate. You don't get the appreciation and all that you might get in the tax write-offs, but you're involved in that. You can some of your mutual funds, if you just have your 401k, you're probably invested in real estate. You might find somebody you can work with that you can do certain things for them, like you know finding tenants and this and that you get a portion of it. There's also investing and helping people finance the properties. You become the banker, so you don't. Somebody else owns the home, but you're the first lien. So if they don't pay, you own the house. There are other ways. People who don't pay their taxes, tax liens. You might be able to get into real estate that way. So don't give up. Uh, there are ways of getting into the real estate market, especially if you have no money, income, or assets.
There are ninja ways, even without ninja
There,
loans. Like you said, there's a
exactly.
million there are a million ways, probably even more than that, um, to become a millionaire. Really, there's infinite ways to become a millionaire and to become as wealthy as someone might want to be. So it's really up to
Right.
human creativity, and real estate in particular has so many paths. And that's one of the reasons so many of us struggle, is because we keep jumping between paths and we have shiny object syndrome. And it's very easy to see or to feel like some other
Hmm.
path is better than the one you're on. So let me go over there and do that. And to some degree, that's important, actually, to go explore those paths to find out what actually fits your personality and fits your current amount of income, assets, etc., your risk tolerance, the economy, the way it is right now, all kinds of factors to find out what really fits right now for you,
Hmm.
and given the time that you're in, right, and the position that you're in. So, Jeff, thank you so much for being here, man. You've really shared
My
so
pleasure, son.
much valuable information, and I hope that people don't feel that, oh, his story is mostly from the late 2000s and everything that happened back then. So how is it realistic, and how is it pertinent to what we're dealing with now in 2023, going into 2024? Uh, the lessons that you have shared are really timeless. So I hope that we all can take that to heart and be thankful that you have taken the time to be here with us. Jeff, how can people
Thank you.
contact you if they want to?
Well, thank you, Sonny. I'm retired now, but I do have a few Facebook groups I have on Facebook groups, personal development Facebook groups. So one is the Mega Achievement Newsletter. But if you want, just look me up on Facebook at Jeff Ginsbarg, and I'm also Instagram. That's the same page, and my email address is Jeffrey Ginsbarg. That's Jeffrey G as in George, INS, B as in boy, A as in apple, R, G as in George at gmail.com. And maybe, Sonny, you can share that with anybody in comments. And just reach out. Yeah, I continue to look. I still uh, search things out. I look at real estate all the time. I'm in an apartment in Orange County, California, and I'm looking to maybe upscale a little bit and just looking at options.
For your contact info, we'll definitely put that in the comments below, or the description, I should say, below the video on YouTube and wherever else we post. So thank you for sharing that. I'm sure some people will be interested in contacting you. And you're right, no matter what age any of us are, there's always a way that we can consider being in the real estate game. I enjoy that it's a team game, that we all need each other. And it's, to me, it's a microcosm of life, that we all have strengths, we all have weaknesses. And if we work together, we can often do things that we didn't think that we could do. And that's a wonderful thing. And
Thank
that's
you,
how you and
Sonny.
I started in Toastmasters. You were encouraging me to give that first icebreaker speech, and then that first 5 to 7 minute speech. I was like, 5 to 7 minutes. I gotta stand up there myself on my own, and people staring at me for 5 to 7 minutes. Like, it seems like an eternity. And everything in life seems so hard, seems almost impossible sometimes, until you do it, and then you realize that's that's very doable.
It's very
So
doable. And maybe like you're talking about, maybe getting finding a real estate mentor. I had started a, a mastermind group, and a number of the people had real estate experience. One person had many doors. He had a number of real estate apartments, homes in the Long Beach area. And you know, and then our friend Johnny, he had a few rental homes, so it was good to be involved with that. That kind of encouraged me too. So, and you know, I talked about Robert Kiyosaki. Maybe play the cash flow game. You know, to learn how to invest.
you and I were
It's
gonna do that, and we haven't yet, but sure. I think we briefly played the online version, which I don't think is as good as the actual board game. So maybe we will play the board game at some point.
yes. I have a friend who's inviting us. He just has to get some things worked out
Sounds
at
good.
home. So, yeah.
Meanwhile, again, thanks, Jeff, so much for being here, and let's all move towards doing some real estate deals. See you next time.